What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Brandon Checks Hyatt, and I'm here tonight on this great TGI Friday with the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Zorich. Chris Zorich, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome, man. I'm glad you answered the call, and Dano's here to help me unpack, and you guys have had a couple shows with Dano already, and he's been forced in the fire quite a few times, man.
Hey, I'm glad to do it, man. It's always a good time.
We're getting you forged early. We're getting you forged early, man. So without further ado, we have a very special guest, Chris Zorich. Right now, for all of you that need a little refresher, I got a quick little, I'll say a little appetizer, because I like to relate, as you guys know already on this podcast, it's either sports or food for me. So here's a quick little appetizer of Chris Zorich down in the trenches, baby. Let's go.
Oh shit! I've never even seen that video before. Oh, that's awesome! Oh man, you need to give me a copy of that, man.
I know who has it.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
I've never seen that before. That's pretty cool.
Hey, the best part though is, Chris, you lived it, baby. You lived it. So yeah, man, I'm really excited about this. You know, when you talk about good old Notre Dame football, when you talk about Bears football, it's hard to put two underneath one roof, but you encompass all of that. And we're so excited to have you on, man. I'll tell you what, let me just tell you that the pleasure to find out who our heroes are that we watched at such an early age, and watch them, like when you answered the bell for Mongo, that transcended me, because I didn't know like the ins and outs of you, and how could I, but to find out how much you do, how much you help out with all different sorts of things and whatever, and you're a part of the community, you help out all the time. It's really cool. I mean, to see the other side of you is awesome. And I just want to thank you once again on September for answering that bell to help Mongo with his fight against ALS. And that was really special. And the crowd was on fire, man. They were so excited to have you. There were so many Notre Damers out there, Bears out there. And of course, you had a couple other Chicago Bear brothers, and that it was just a very special night, man.
Well, it's really interesting when you think about kind of, what Steve has meant for the city of Chicago and the Chicago Bears. It's just absolutely amazing. Yeah, you got people like Richard Dent and Mike Singletary and Hampton. And, for me, I had a chance to play with some of those guys, and they were always kind of the nice, kind of fluffy, kind of, those are the outside guys. Like, there was no one like in the trenches, right? And Steve was. And so I was very fortunate enough to have a chance to play with them for a couple of years. And, the biggest thing I remember is, he would call me Rook. And I think he may even call me Rookie, like after my first year, probably, which is crazy. But he was like, I feel like to lift weights. I'm like, yeah. He's like, come with me. So this would be like after like a 3 or 4 hour practice. We just, me and him, it's like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, we're sitting there doing curls. And I'm like, what the hell? But for me, to kind of go back to what you're talking about, like being a fan.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Chicago. And so right. I'm of a certain age where McDonald's used to have these big football cards.
Yes.
And, like if you bought like a Big Mac, a card or whatever, it's right after they won a Super Bowl. And so I had those all along my wall when I was a kid, right? And so, I'm probably a sophomore or junior in high school, and these are all on my wall. Yeah. And you fast forward several years, and I'm playing with Steve McMichael. I'm playing with Richard Dent. I'm playing with Mike Singletary. And for me, it was just this amazing experience. So I hear you guys' passion about the Bears and Steve and stuff like that, and I really feel as though like I live I've lived the life of every fan, just like you, because I was once one that had a chance to actually play with
Right.
the Bears, right? And Mike Singletary was my idol when I was playing. I wore number 50 in high school and also in college because of Mike Singletary. And then I had a chance to play with him in the NFL. So, like, for me, like, I literally live the dream every day.
Well, bro, I can tell you right now, as a former left tackle, lining up side by side, looking right at you, I don't even look at you as a fan. I would be wondering, like, hey, Dano, can you give me I need double, triple team here. Like some of those videos and flashbacks and remembering the mayhem that you caused. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, just to be able to just pounce another human being, boom, down on the turf and come up with, like, you didn't even exhaust any energy. Like, you had so much extra energy, like when you did your little, I was like, whoa, and you had steam rolling off your head and stuff. I was like, oh, baby.
It's funny you guys are talking about all this. It kind of leads me into my first question I had. I'm 46. So growing up, when you were playing, I mean, all the kids around, we were playing street football on defense. They wanted to be Chris Zorich, We
Wow.
loved the intensity. We loved, just the motor you had on you. And then also, the Bears currently have a few local guys on the roster now. It seems like more than normal the past couple of years. For you, could that be a distraction, or do you find that sometimes you're able to feed off of that, and actually there are some advantages of being playing for your local team?
So, Daniel, you're going to be amazed. That is an awesome question.
Thank you.
And I say that because people don't think about that.
Right.
And as much as you think, hey, this is a great playing in their hometown, like it's almost like a hindrance, so to speak. I mean, obviously, it's awesome. Like I mean, high school in the same city, I mean, all this stuff, and that's great.
Right.
But the thing that people don't think about is all of a sudden you got friends from like grammar school,
right,
you never talked to. You have family members that you never knew you had.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's these second cousins on your mom's side that married your uncle's sister's brother. It was amazing. And so for me, like the hardest thing trying to deal with being from Chicago was like literally trying to take care of friends and family and all their tickets, all their ticket requests.
Right.
I mean, and then like people think you get them for free. No, you get 4 comp tickets. That's all you get. After that, it's full. You don't even get a discount. It's full price. And so, some people got 20, 30 people come to games, but it's so funny because, there is that distraction. And I almost always like playing away games for me because it was just, there was less chaos, right?
Right, less
and so
distraction.
You got your buddies, and I'm way before like text messaging and all that stuff. So they used to call the hotel room. And I'm like, dude, I'm taking sleep. They're like, oh, dude, hey man, you're gonna kick rent. I'm like, dude, like, let me get some sleep.
Right.
So I can't imagine, like, for the guys that are from Chicago, in the Chicago area that are on the team now, like text messages, social media. I mean, you almost have to like turn it off like on Wednesday because like you have like your friends will like stop by your house. You're like, dude, like
do not disturb.
Seriously. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but Daniel, that's a great question. People never really think about that.
Yeah,
so
I was wondering.
It's almost like you kind of wish you were like on a different team, but not really, because it's awesome playing, for your hometown team. But it's almost like you wish you kind of played for like someone, or the fact that, no one. And then for me, like I was a really shy kid growing up. And so like all the chicks I tried to talk to in high school didn't do the day. And then you play for the Bears, and all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, how you, It's like, wait a minute, you didn't give me the time of day when I was a freshman, and now you give me your number, Crazy.
Chris, speaking about your life, you're a master class in triumphing over adversity. You spoke to countless kids about being your best self, you know. And what advice do you give today's players overcoming challenges? What's the best to be the best player that they could be? You know, here's one right now that you know that's going on here in Chicago. What would you have to say to Justin with what he's going through with that adversity? You know.
Well, a lot of, I mean, when you're talking about on the professional level, it's all about business.
Right.
And so, I mean, either you can perform or you don't, or you're out. I mean, that's basically how it is. You know, the kids I'd like to talk to are the kids are in high school and the kids are in college that think that that they're going to make it to the pros. They think that they're going to make it to college, right? And it's almost like a funnel, right? There's like 100,000 kids play high school sports. And then as you get older, you know, you senior, junior, whatever, it starts to get smaller and smaller. And then every kid in college thinks they're going to go to the pros, which, you know, as you guys are familiar with, it's a very small percentage. And so the idea that when I talk to high school kids, it's being the best you can be. And if your family can afford you to go to college, that's great. But if athletics is the only way you can go, then make sure that you can at least get a scholarship, right? Or work hard. Listen to your coach, you know, and everybody all of a sudden thinks that they're a pro at like age 16 or 17. It's like, no, there's a lot more that goes into it than what you think. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's parents as well. Like parents think, you know, hey, you're going to go pro. And I don't know if you guys have kids. We have a daughter, but
I have a daughter.
You have to be real if your kids are going to participate in sports or any extracurricular activity. If they're not good, then you have to be frank with them. You know, I mean, you can encourage them, but if they're and so oftentimes you hear parents trying to live their dreams through kids, and think that their kids are a lot better than they are. And so, you know, I was an athletic director at a couple schools, and you know, I gave the power to the coaches. To kind of talk to parents. But eventually, you know, I would talk to parents, and they're like, "Well, my kid's not playing," and it's like, "Well, that's a coach's decision, and it's not an athletic director's decision. I have to make sure that your kid is safe playing. I got to make sure that they have the proper equipment, let alone see how much time a kid is getting, right? And so the idea is that if you listen to your coaches and listen to your parents' encouragement, but not kind of like what they're saying as far as, you know, hey, you're the best player on this team. You may not be, but as parents, we always tend to think that our kids are. And so, you know, to the parents out there, please be real with your kids.
Wow, you know what? And that's wisdom right there. Because I tell you one thing, it's really hard to find that balance for a while, just because once your heart's involved, it almost like, especially with your kid, like you got those rose-colored glasses on no matter what they do. It takes a while to take, and it's so hard to tell another parent because like you get it. We all get it. We've all been there. It's not like none of us can escape the rose-colored glasses of our kid. I mean, they walk on water at some point, you know, and then it's like, well, there was a guy who spoke a lot of wisdom in my life at the steel mill, and he told me, you know, he's almost 70 now. He's in his mid to late 60s, and he told me, he goes, Brandon, you got two kids. You got one that lives with you, and then once they leave your house, that's your other kid. And I'm like, no. The one day, like the light went on, and I'm like, I remembered what he said. You know what I'm saying? So it takes a little while. So, you know,
right. Daniel, do you have any kids?
Yeah, I got two daughters. I got a 24-year-old daughter who's actually her first year of teaching. Okay. And I got a 16-year-old daughter. So yeah,
well, exactly. You know, you want the best for your kids.
Yeah.
But at some point, as a parent, you have to be realistic. You know.
Right.
That's like with my son. He's well, my daughter's 19. She's going to esthetician school. She'll be finishing up next month. She was playing travel ball, softball, whatever. She wanted to pitch, you know, and baseball's in our family. Jack Hyatt, my uncle, he played for the Cubs in the 70s, and then he went to play for the Giants and stuff. So I was really excited, and I was trying to connect the dots and put it all together. But she didn't want to put in all the work. She didn't want to throw the 100 balls a day to pitch. And I said, you could have picked any other position out in baseball, but you had to pick the toughest one out of all of them, where you have to play your butt off every day in order for it to work out. My son's 8 years old, and he's into like karate, the ninja class, and soccer, and he likes WWE wrestling. He loves Mongo. He'll send videos to Mongo where he'll take Mongo and he'll beat everybody upside their head and slam them down. And he goes, Mongo wins, Team Mongo forever, and all that stuff. And he appreciates that. Mongo appreciates that. But I don't know where he's going with it. And I'll tell you this much. The first one, I didn't like that. That was like, I had to figure it out. There's no there's no training manual. There's no playbook. Like in football, there's a playbook. You go by it, right? With parenting, it's like the first one is like the guinea. I hate saying this. Please erase this. Like a guinea pig. The second one, like she's like, I'm sure she's scratching her head like, Dad, how come you're so much different?
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah, you can probably speak into that a little bit, Dano. But I got one more quick question, then we'll give it back to Dano. While you played at Notre Dame, you once took a class taught by an instructor by the name of Kevin Warren. A little while later, you would become the first client for a sports agency headed by a young lawyer named Kevin Warren. How did you and Kevin hit it off so well and form such a strong working relationship?
That's a great question as well. It's so interesting, and I'm all about the underdog and someone working hard and to perfect their craft. And having a chance to kind of meet Kevin, he's really ingratiating, and he's really, really a great guy. When you spend 5-10 minutes with him, or even if you just hear him speak, you kind of get fired up and so involved in what he's saying. And so for me, as a 21-year-old kid, kind of listening to what he's talking about, and as he made that transition from being a professor to an agent, like, why wouldn't I have someone who is energetic, really will outwork anyone? And even now, when he was named the presidency of the Bears, at his press conference afterward, I was being interviewed, and I was kind of jokingly saying, like, the Bears have no idea who they got. He's the first person in the office, the last person to leave. I'm pretty sure he has a couple suits in his office closet, because there are times that he probably will sleep at the office, and he's just that hard of a worker. And you hear kind of what he's talking about, and really the fact that he can inspire people. And it was so interesting because I was fortunate. I was his first client, and so I was spoiled because I had him for a full year before he got client number 2, right? So for client number 1, like, we were talking on a daily basis, and that's when fax machines were around. And so, like, once a week, he would fax me topics of conversations that I could use if I'm at a cocktail party, or if I'm talking with someone that made me not sound like a football player. Even though I went to Notre Dame, like, he wanted me to be a well-rounded professional athlete. And they were, and I don't remember what the comments were, nor do I have them still, but I would love to have been able to pull them out. But
yeah,
the idea would be, like, what agent cares enough about you that wants you to sound like you're an average person at a cocktail party, right? Because you're not just a dumb athlete who kind of only knows one thing, and that's football. He wanted me to be a well-rounded individual. And that really kind of shows even now what he's accomplished, not only with the Vikings as the Big Ten commissioner, but also with the Chicago Bears, all of the things that he's creating to build a great culture. And I think that's what's great. So I know it's kind of a long answer to your question.
No, not at all.
But it's if you spend time with Kevin, you'll really get excited and get fired up about the things that he's passionate about, and then eventually you'll be passionate about them as well. So, imagine an impressionable 21-year-old kid hearing from Kevin about what he can do and what his dreams are, building an agency and wanting the best for you as a person, not necessarily as an athlete. And he inspired me to go to law school, and he was at my law school graduation, and so he was at my wedding. So I mean, the relationship that I have with him, goes beyond like 32 years or something like that.
To piggyback on what you just said really quick, I just recently read something and it transcends into what you're talking about. And I never thought of it this way, but some of the coaches, like real coaches matter. Coaching is very important. And some of the coaches that I had is just as important as my drill sergeant, some of my upbringing, the village that took to, get this big-headed freaking person in a right direction. What was said was that a good coach will take time and invest in the person and not the player. And for some reason that unlocks the player, and the player takes that next step and actually becomes better. And that sounds to me like something that Kevin Warren did with you and just made you like a better person, and you feel like you were invested and he actually cared about you as a person. And that is super cool, man. That's super cool.
Well, but you also see it currently with the player, even though like he hasn't even been there for a year yet.
Right.
He was at Justin Fields' graduation, right? He was at Frank Kmet's graduation. I mean, when someone invests time in you, now a lot of people may feel that, say, "Oh, well, everybody does that." Well, no, everybody doesn't do that.
No.
How many graduations do you think George McCaskey went to of the players that were, under his on his team, right? Or any owner, Jerry Jones. How many graduations has Jerry Jones attended of his players? And so that just shows that this culture shift that Kevin brings. And this is not like something that you can put on the whiteboard and say, well, this is how we're going to build a championship team. It's the little things. I mean, he was a player. He was an all Ivy League player. I mean, he was a student athlete, basketball player.
Wow,
great player, and he understands that it takes the little things in order to win. And so when you have someone who may not have had that experience, and they think, oh, well, this is how you win.
Yeah.
And then you have someone who actually spent time in winning programs and was a student athlete and realized kind of what it takes. And, for all the athletes out there, when you talk about taking care of the small things first, everybody automatically knows what I'm talking about. It's the fundamentals, right? In order for you to be able to catch a pass, you need to first be able to run. You need to be able to hold your hands out. And oftentimes, younger kids may not understand that. They just say, oh, hey, I want to be the best shooter. I want to be the best quarterback I can be. But you have to put the time into it. I mean, I think a perfect example is they always talk about Michael Jordan and shooting free throws. No one saw the thousands of free throws that he shot after practice. Practice may have ended at 6 o'clock. He's walking out of the gym at like 10, 11 o'clock at night. But no one understands that. And so because Kevin has experienced that, and understands that now, he can't go out there and he can't be on the court of the field, but he can show his staff, his employees, his players, how much he cares about them. And by attending a graduation,
wow,
that's important.
That is, yeah.
The culture.
Yeah, I think the culture is the foundation of the team. You got to have that first before you can.
And it's not even a professional team. It's in business, right? I mean, when a new CEO comes into a Fortune 500 company, I mean, they have to understand the culture first. You just don't walk in, and if the place is not doing well, fire everybody. You have to understand, and that's what Kevin did. He's taking step by step. He was able to interview all the employees, all the staff members from part-time.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
I mean, that's something that people do at regular businesses. Now, all of a sudden, you have someone who's in charge of the football program who understands what it takes to win, and he's putting those things in place in order to change the culture. And so now it's okay. And he mentioned this in the press conference that it's okay to walk through the halls saying we want to win a championship, we want to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's okay to say that, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
It was funny when you said something about taking if George McCaskey, who he took, you know, I was thinking, I had a flashback of like watching Weekend at Bernie's. Yeah. So, Dana, what else you got, buddy?
I just wanted to shift gears a little bit for a second, Chris.
Yeah.
With you being a defensive tackle, the Bears run the cover 2 Tampa 2 defense, and everybody says how the 3 technique is such a critical part of that defense. Can you have? I mean, is it critical to have like a dog there at 3, just like an all-pro 3 technique, or can the defense be ran properly if the rest of with a replacement player 3 technique? If you've got players at all-pro players or at the other levels, at linebacker, safety, secondary, whatever.
Well, I mean, I'm obviously a little partial because I'm a defensive lineman, but the idea, and we're seeing now with the salary cap, you see now that if you're able to get, you know, an expensive corner or defensive back, you know, where does that place everybody else, right? Well, where's the emphasis on certain positions? And then that's why you see when you see folks out there that are building great defenses, oftentimes you may have 1 or 2 great, like when I say great, expensive players.
Yeah, right.
But like you're saying, you have like a lot of dogs, right? Who are out there who are making league minimum, but are great players. And unfortunately, you may only have them for a couple of years because when their contract is up, all of a sudden now they're that hot player that's wanted. And so what I think the Bears have done, they actually have a good combination of, and especially from Sweat coming in, that they have guys who are out there that are actually, the defense has improved since the first game of the year. They kind of talk about kind of halfway through the season when Sweat came, and you're able to see now that they are an improved defense. And with the new, I think they got $30 million or $25 million that they're able to get from the NFL now with the salary cap. Now they have a chance to go out there and get better players. And oh, by the way, they also have the 1st and 9th pick in the 1st round. So
let's go.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting draft.
Yeah, it seems like that Sweat's a multiplier. You know, he came in and he kind of made everybody else around him better.
Which is great, right? Because as people have to double team him, other positions get freed up. And you know, we all had a chance to play sports. And so when a person has to be occupied by 2 people, then other people have an opportunity to make plays.
Dude, it's difficult. It's so hard. Block outside in, easier said than done for sure. Hey, especially when you got a Chris Zorich in the middle, and that guy, you know, it's ridiculous. I can't even think about it right now. Hey, Zorstradamus, quick. Okay, so I gotta ask you while we're on, man. Big fan of the Irish. What's your prediction for 24?
You know, it's really, really interesting. I think I just read something that because of the way the college football championship format has changed, now it's going to be 12 teams as opposed to the 4 from last year.
Yeah.
I think I read now that the 4 conference champions are automatically going to be 1 through 4. And they were saying because Notre Dame is not in a conference, that even if they won out and they're ranked, like they could be ranked number 1, they'll still be theoretically number 5. And so it's really interesting. So outside of all that, I'm just one of those kind of old-fashioned players. Like, I need to make sure that we're ready for Texas A&M, which is our first game. So, you know, everything, and I'm sure Marcus felt that when he had to play Ohio State for the first game a couple of years ago. I think they got some great recruits coming in, but nowadays you're not sure if you're going to be able to have them. People are going to switch on you the day before camp or the first day of camp if they get yelled at or whatever.
You're touching on.
Unfortunately. So really, I'm just concentrating on that first game and really I want to see how Riley performs at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
You have some great guys that are behind him as well. I think by signing Al Golden and getting in a better offensive coordinator is going to be great. And now Notre Dame is able to throw around some money. So now you see that their offensive and defensive coordinators are one of the highest paid positions in the country, which just recently that hasn't been the case. So you're going to see a lot of improvement.
And I also saw something within the week, I believe, where and what you said holds true. So now I'm going to put a pin in it and wait for it to come into existence, but let's speak it into existence right now, because this is what we want, right? They said that Notre Dame has the best class coming in for 2024. So that's
interesting.
That's huge. But what you said though, the transfer portal, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
You gotta wait till they show up, right? I mean, and that's really the thing is you think. I mean, there were a couple of kids from last year's class that up until the day of they were in, and then all of a sudden, a couple of days beforehand, they went someplace else.
Yeah, so, we're all zigging, and now you zag on me.
College coaches. I mean, I hate the portal. I hate NIL. I mean, there should be another way that the kids need to be compensated, not through NIL, because I think that all the schools kind of did a collective, like, we don't have to pay. And I think that's wrong. I think that collectively the colleges should be the one sharing the revenue as opposed to going to outside sources to kind of use their name, image and likeness to compensate players.
And do you think that's the biggest difference between playing D-line in today's game from when you played, or what do you think is the biggest difference? Is it the physicality or what, or what do you think the difference is?
It's funny. I mean, and you'll see coaching is cyclical, right? Because when we were all playing, I'm sure that the coaches back in the 70s and the early 80s were like, oh, this game has changed. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still football, right? I mean, some rules may change. It's still baseball, still basketball. You still have to get the ball in the hoop, right? And so all of this,
I like that.
Well, but it's true,
It is. I know.
So the idea is, regardless of what happens on the outside, there's still 11 guys in the huddle that have to make a first down. They're given 4 chances to do it. And so, yes, there may be different schemes and something maybe hot RPOs that may be hot right now, but at the end of the day, the game is still the same. Now, I say that now I couldn't be a college player now because this social media thing would just be like I'd have to be locked in my room because you can't do anything.
Chris, you wouldn't be on it. You wouldn't be on it. I don't.
No, absolutely not.
I think you'd be okay.
Absolutely not.
I think you'd be okay. I think you'd be okay, and you still rock a cut off shirt better than any of those kids. I'm so glad you retired that thing because you made the rest of us guys look bad, bro. I'm like, please.
I'll tell you one thing. And if I was playing kind of during this NIL situation, it'd be really tough because I grew up kind of very poor, and if a school offered me $10,000, I'd be in, right? And so some of these amounts that these kids are getting are really life-changing. And so it's hard to say, hey, if you pull a kid from an environment whose parents might not be making a lot, or maybe from a single family, or their parents aren't as educated as other parents, and they see this as an opportunity of a kid kind of getting out of a financial situation or improving the family situation, then how could you not go to the school that's going to pay you the most? Because nothing is guaranteed, right? I mean, you can get hit by a car, you could blow out your knee. I mean, anything can happen. The game of football is tough. And it's so much pressure for these young kids these days to kind of make a decision on, I want to go to this institution for a degree. Like that's almost like the third or fourth thing on the list. The first thing is, how much money do I get? Who's the coach? And can I leave in 3 years? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And when you leave Notre Dame, you're legit, like athletics is second and your academics is number one because you're one of the smartest kids in the nation just going to Notre Dame. So and you don't have like beaches and 80 degrees year round to sidetrack your nothing. You're in a cornfield freaking hut, like
Which again, I don't see how kids do it these days, because if given the opportunity to go, I mean, I had an opportunity to go to Miami, but the idea that
that's what I do have a question about that. What made Chris Zorich pick out of all the places that you had to choose from Notre Dame? What made you choose Notre Dame?
So for folks who might not know, and even now, you're allowed kind of 5 official visits, right? Or your final 5. What are your final 5 schools?
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to be recruited by Miami, Michigan, Illinois, Notre Dame, and Northwestern. And
wow.
I was really lucky. At the time, I didn't know, I didn't watch college football. No one in my area ever went to college. So I didn't know about Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And I went to Chicago Vocational, which is right off the Skyway. Mm-hmm. And from my high school to Notre Dame is 90 miles.
Wow.
Yet I never heard of it before. And so when the assistant coach came to my high school and said, "Hey, how would you like to attend Notre Dame?" I said, "Sir, I would love to, but my mom doesn't like to fly." Mm-hmm. And he said, "What do you mean your mom doesn't like to fly?" And I said, "Well, there's no way my mom would fly to France to see me play." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, you guys got the hunchback guy and that big church, right?" And he was like, "What?" Like, he's looking at my SAT score going, "What? Like, what?" He's like, "We're 90 miles away." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "It took me an hour and a half to get here." I was like, "What?" So like my eyes got big. I was like, "Oh my God." So like he left a media guide and I just like dove into it, right? I just educated myself about Notre Dame and Notre Dame football and really wanted to go there. But at the time, I'm at a vocational school. Like, I'm learning welding and sheet metal, auto mechanics. And so I had to take extra courses to even be considered to go to Notre Dame. And my senior year, we're all in high school, and I arranged like this perfect schedule where I was going to be done. Like my last period ended at 11. Then I had lunch at 11:30, and then for the rest of the day I had open, and then practice was at 4. So I'm like, that's the perfect schedule. But I had to take an extra history course, an extra English course, an extra science course. So I wound up going to school from like 7:30 in the morning to 4:15. Practice was at 4. I missed 15 minutes of practice every day just so I could take the classes that I would be eligible just to go to, just to be considered. Then I had to like get A's in all the classes. I mean, it was just crazy. So, wow. But I wanted to go there because of the academic reputation, and that's one place that cares more about academics, honestly, about the athletic part, right? And when you're finished with a degree from Notre Dame, as you mentioned before, Brandon, I mean, you really have an opportunity after graduation to go anywhere in the world. And that was attractive to me versus the other schools I had an opportunity to attend. But if for some reason Notre Dame reneged on their scholarship, then I would probably have gone to Northwestern.
Yeah.
Dano, could you imagine this guy freaking with a welding? I mean, like, that's
man.
Right.
Hey, the art part,
hey man, right now instead of ESPN or something.
Hey, I work at the railroad. You could have used you there at the railroad welding.
Hey man, hey,
there's a big ass I-beam he's getting ready to weld. Here comes the picture, and freaking Zorich just flags him off. I got this freaking 20-foot freaking I-beam that's 1,000 pounds. Hold on, I got this. Put it on, set it, weld it. There you go. Take it away, boys.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah. Let's just ask him a couple more questions and let him go, bro. He's been here like.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Chris.
No, absolutely, man. This is a good time, man. Like I said, I wish I was outside of my backyard smoking a cigar.
Right. Yeah. I actually had a question from a friend of mine who's a viewer of the podcast here. he said that he had heard on the, if you don't remember, if you on the radio, if it was from Wani on the score or whatever, that one day that you were at practice or maybe in the locker room reading a book, and then Wani had got upset because it wasn't the playbook. Is that true, false, or if it is true, would you be able to tell us a little more about that situation?
Well, it's interesting that Wannstedt heard the story. I mean, or relayed the
Yeah.
story, right? Because I'm sure it was kind of off, but
Right.
Statute limitations. He's good, man.
He wasn't the smartest. He was the sharpest pencil in the box.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember his first day he came over. So I was on a team. This is '93. They had fired Mike Ditka, and they had hired Dave Wannstedt. And I called Russell Maryland, who was at Miami
yeah,
with Dave, and also at Dallas with Dave.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, dude, tell me about it. He's like, dude, he's going to love you. You're a short guy like me. You're fast. He's going to love you. So I'm like, all right, great. So we get in that first team meeting, and, he's a better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach. I mean, head coach has a lot of responsibilities. You have to be a CEO, right? And he's really not.
Right.
I mean, he's a good defensive coordinator. But he talks to us, like, at the end, and then he says, if you guys don't play for the Bears, or you don't put your heart into it, you guys have to go back to being janitors and gym teachers. And I'm looking around the room, I'm like, did he just say, like, if we get cut, we're going to be janitors and gym teachers? Like, this is his first, like, speech he gives to, like, the whole, like, team. Like, wow, like, we got some great
motivators.
Like, Mike Singletary in here. Like, there's some great players that are in this room. Richard Dent, and so it was just kind of a weird vibe anyway. But so to kind of reference that story, there were a couple of times that I was reading, I guess on the treadmill, or I was reading in the training room or whatever, and he had made a comment that I need to be more involved in football than reading books. And I just kind of thought that was really strange, right? And it's like, well, I'm sitting here icing my knee for 20 minutes, and you want me to be reading the playbook, okay? Like, what are you doing to enhance your? I mean, we're 4-12. Like, what have you been doing to, like, enhance that win percentage? If you're bitching at me because I'm reading a non-football, my head should be in the playbook. But like, what about your staff? Well, what about and you had a couple 4-12 seasons, and
Chris, Chris, were those outward thoughts or those inward thoughts at the time?
I mean, well, and it's funny because I was a player rep, and so I was going back and forth with Dave all the time on issues, and I remember this one vividly, and this was kind of like, it's just frustrating because
that's why you got such a big chest from all those push-ups he made you do when you were freaking running.
Right. So this is off season, and we're at House Hall, and our defensive line, we're in our defensive line meeting before practice. So, we're not going to have any pads on, any helmets or anything on. And our defensive line coach talks about how we're going to do one-on-one drills with the offensive line. And we're all like, first of all, it's awesome. Like, we're not supposed to be even touching each other, let alone do one-on-one pass rush. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I'm not in charge. I got to talk to the big man upstairs. So I'm like, all right. So I leave the meeting, go in my locker. I get our collective bargaining agreement, our book, our CBA.
CBA, yeah.
That's why he didn't like you reading.
No shit. I find the page where it says no contact in the off season, right? I go up, knock on the door.
Oh, geez.
And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, he's like, you're supposed to be in meetings. I'm like, well, yeah, but, so coach, our defensive line coach explained supposed to do one-on-one pass rush. He's like, yeah, what's the problem? I was like, well, and I opened the page between them. I was like, well, according to our CBA, this isn't supposed to happen because, section 4585. And he's like, well, what is that? I'm like, well, this is our union.
Dude, he's got to know this one
collective bargaining agreement.
These are the rules. I mean, you were once a player before, you use the union as well. And he's like, come on, that's bullshit. I'm like, well, we're not supposed to have any contact. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Go back to the meeting. I was like, all right. So I go back to the meeting, and they're like, what do you say? What do you say? I was like, well, he kind of just blew it off. They're like, ooh, Chris, you got to report him if you do it. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm ready. So we go to practice, and we do our calisthenics. Then he calls the whole team up, and he goes, guys, I'm going to let you know that there's one person on this team that doesn't want to win. And I'm sitting there going, like, is he about to say me?
Here it goes.
And he's like, yeah, this offseason we're supposed to improve. We want to get better, but there's one person here that doesn't want to, and that person is our illustrious union rep, Chris Zorich. I'm like, wow. I'm like, well, and he says, and I turn around, I was like, well, coach, I don't want you to get fined $50,000. And what happened was the previous week, Jimmy Johnson had done the same thing, and he got fined $50,000. I'm like, coach, I'm just trying to save you $50,000. He's like, yeah, whatever. So like he just had a different mentality than a lot of the coaches now, right?
Did he get great? Did he get fined $50,000?
Well, no, we actually didn't have the context. He actually did listen to me. He modified our practice, so we didn't have to do it. But he had no problem embarrassing the person who was trying to fight on behalf of the players, right? So what is that? I mean, I'm obviously not a big fan anyway, but you see someone like Dan Campbell right now, who guys want to go to Detroit just because he's the head coach.
Yes. Run through a wall for him.
Exactly. And so when you're able, on a professional level, when you're able to, again, create a culture, we talked about culture before, if you create a culture where people want to come because of the type of culture you created because of you as the head coach, you've won half the battle, right? I mean, you aren't going to go in there trying to convince players, hey, listen to me, you want to win. I mean, they want to be part of what he's doing there. And so you juxtapose someone like Dan Campbell versus someone like Dave Wannstedt, who would rather embarrass a player or would rather do it or do it without this or have this chaotic culture where he's putting fear, he's trying to strike fear in you, saying that if you don't make it here, I'm going to cut you and you're going to be a gym teacher or a janitor. Like what? How does that inspire me to want to like be better versus someone like Dan Campbell, who like is a man of his word, and on the fourth down thing, he's like, I do it again, and I take the blame. Like you would never hear Dave Wannstedt do anything or say anything like that.
Yeah, I've always found when you
really long answer to your question, Dan. I'm sorry about
that. I've always found when you have a good leader, you almost want to win or succeed as much for them as you do for yourself. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
and just think about everybody's getting paid very well, as everyone else is around the league, but people like Dan Campbell make a difference between coaches, right?
Right.
I mean, as an example, like, wouldn't you want to play for that guy? Like, you never even talk to him, and like just his actions, like just what you see, he could be a jackass in the locker room, but what you see, like you're like, man, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that's just you kind of standing on the sideline, right? Imagine like the guys around the league. Imagine the guys on his team.
Right.
Like they would love to play, and they would, as you mentioned before, be willing to go through a brick wall. And that's on a professional. That's not even college or high school.
Right.
You're getting grown ass men who make millions of dollars. They want to go through a brick wall for that's the environment you want to be part of.
Leader of men.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Speaking of leaders, Chris, what's your first impression on the new Bears defensive coordinator, Eric Washington? What's your take on that guy?
I mean, I've only seen what I've seen in the media, and I've seen a couple of interviews, and I mean, he just got here a couple of days ago. I mean, I'm just excited that guys on the team are excited. I think I read a couple of guys that played for him at other teams,
Buffalo,
and I mean, when you get guys who have bought in without like a day of practice, and that's important. You want to get guys that someone is familiar with to kind of help you along. And again, at the end of the day, these are coaches. And if you're able to learn something from them, or they're willing to kind of be part of wanting to make you better, then that's always important.
Bro, I got so many questions about pass rush and sweat. Unbelievable. I'll save it for another time if you're willing to come back on. But
Sure, absolutely.
I got to ask you one question before we close up. Well, actually, let me ask you two, because I got to ask one about Mongo. What did it mean to you to hear that Mongo, also Hester and Peppers, but mostly Mongo because you played with Mongo, to make it into the Hall of Fame? 3, and now we've got, what is it, like 39? We're leading in all of the Hall of Fame. It's freaking amazing.
You should call it the Bears of Fame, my friend.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of mentioned before about my relationship with Steve and kind of what he did for me, but
yeah,
outside of even him having ALS, I mean, when you look at his stats, like, I mean, he should have been in years ago.
Yes.
Amen. And so when you see, it's like, well, they've had kind of a couple guys already from that 85 team go in.
Yep.
And so I'm sure, well, but again, if the defense was that dominant, right, then yeah, if you had great play, I mean, think about all the guys on the Bears that who deserve to be and that are not. You look at someone like Otis Wilson or Wilbur Marshall or Hartenstein, or I mean, Leslie Frazier. I mean, all these guys that are great, Gary Fencer, all these guys that are great players, but because they're on such a dominant team, they may not have a chance. Right. And there should be kind of a given or a turnkey list that says if you have X amount of tackles, if you have X amount of these, if you have X amount of starts, then it should be automatic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you compare Stephen Michael's stats with other defensive tackles that have already been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, some of them don't even compare.
No.
I mean, so the idea is that this should have happened such a long time ago that it's just not fair. And then you see, well, maybe it's because Dan got in, Singletary got in, Richard Dent got in. Well, yes, but also the guy who took on a brunt of all those double teams, why isn't that guy?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, one last question. What does Bears GM Chris Zorich do with QB Justin Fields and the Bears' top overall pick in the April's draft?
Well, I mean, as a GM, I mean, you have to think about kind of assess what we currently have. What's this opportunity going to do the next 3, 4, 5 years? And the fact that you've had the number 1 pick last year, you basically hit the lotto kind of twice, right? I mean, when was the last time a team have had back-to-back first picks, right? Probably never happened before. And so it's going to take a lot of research, a lot of things that are going to go into this decision. And I mean, the easy answer is, well, you take Caleb Williams first, right? Because he's a generational player. But if that's the case,
whoa, hold up. You're being non-biased now because Notre Dame and USC got a little friction there. So
right, but if I'm the GM,
but he's a GM. He's GM.
If I'm the GM of the Bears, I'm gonna keep my job. I'm gonna be the GM for the Bears for like the next 10 years.
Right.
So I could care less if the guy paints his fingernails and says "fuck you."
Right? Can he play football? Can he play ball?
You asked me if I was the GM. You didn't say, "Hey, you're an alum of Notre Dame." USC is just.
I'm sorry, I led the witness. I'm sorry.
There you go. So the idea would be, what's the best opportunity? And so then you have to evaluate. So, okay, so if I trade that first pick away, what can I get? And then that's where you start to evaluate and say, well, can we get further if we get, we get a layer number 1 pick, but then we get all these other picks plus some better players. And that's something that's the reason why the current GM gets paid the amount he does, because he has to make that assessment, and at the end of the day, it's going to fall on him. So, I mean, and this is really kind of any business decision that the Bears would make. What's the benefit of the Chicago Bears now and in the future? And I think that if you look at it and assess the opportunity, the value of having that number one pick back-to-back years, then you want to make a difference, because at the end of the day, the GM is going to be assessed what the success that he has had over his time with the Bears.
You know what? You sound you totally dodged. You just sound like the presser yesterday where they were hitting up the offensive coordinator and he was like doing the Matrix stuff like
Shane Wall. Yeah.
But it's not so much that. It's kind of really evaluating.
Who coached you up? Who coached you up?
It's evaluating the opportunity, right? Because I mean, we all can have an emotional tie to Justin or Caleb Williams or whoever it is.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about what the GM has to do,
right,
and the success of his team over the next 4 or 5 years, and because we're talking like, we were like in the playoffs. We weren't. There has to be some improvement from the last couple of years that he's been the main guy, right? And so he has to take the emotion out of it and say, okay, what's the best business decision for the Chicago Bears? And but you have to assess that. And he has a great staff to actually do that, right?
Yeah.
So, we're a bunch of guys watching this shit on TV going, oh yeah, he should do this, he should do that. Well, we haven't put in 60, 70 hours of film on each person or on the mechanics of his three-step drop or taking the ball from under center. I mean, these are all evaluations that as fans we don't even understand, but as a staff they break down that film. They're looking at every minute second of every step of every play that he's had in the last 2 seasons for Caleb Williams, and since Justin has been with the Bears.
I think it's safe to say this draft is going to decide if Poles is the GM for the next 10 years or the next one, or if he's gone after next year.
Sure. Sure. But at the end of the day, I mean, he has this tremendous opportunity, right? Because and he put himself in a situation, right? Because I mean, he didn't have a crystal ball and say, well, the Panthers are going to suck, but he was able to create an environment where there's a strong possibility that may have happened. And guess what it did? So now you threw the dice. It's like, yeah, let's see what happens. Now it's like, oh shit. We now have back-to-back first picks. Oh shit.
I love what he's done, man. I love
what about if next year?
And at the end of the day, I guarantee you he's only averages maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night until the draft. Guaranteed, man.
I bet.
Hey, what if next year Washington sucks just like Carolina sucked? Could you imagine? My God. Force multiplier. You're talking 10 draft picks, 11 draft picks out of one. That's just crazy. There's so much he's got to think about. Like you said, Chris, we're all glad we're not in his shoes.
My God. Yeah. I couldn't even imagine.
Yep. And there's a reason why Kevin's hugging him, though. He's just like, I'm glad it's you, not me, bro.
Right.
Right.
Hey, man, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Man, thanks, Chris. This has been great, man.
Sure thing, man. It was great hanging out with you guys. Brandon, I'll see you in a couple days.
Yeah. Hey, I owe you a couple drinks for this overtime. Double overtime.
I'm in.
All right.
All right, man.
Have a good night.
Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it. A blast.
All right, thanks, Chris.
You got it.
Man, that was so cool, wasn't it, man? That guy, man. You could, I mean, I would listen to him in a phone booth, read out of the yellow pages, man. I'm just like,
it's just surreal.
I don't even know how we would both fit in that phone booth, but we'd figure it out,
Yeah, right. That's just
Dan,
fun, man.
Great job, man. Hey, he gave you the first kudos, remember.
Yeah, right. I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
Yeah, so I think we've you know, we've established we were trying to cut it short tonight because we had like an hour and 50 podcasts last night. We were trying to cut it short.
Oh,
Thank God he was blessing us with his presence and giving us a little bit, a lot extra. So, hey,
and
man,
they seem to have a good time. The guests seem to have a good time, so I guess that's a good sign, huh?
dude, it's so cool because like he's just like us, man. He's like he was welding
Yeah.
and stuff and like going the hard route and just like really going through the trenches and stuff. And that just endeared us even more to
Yeah.
him. You know what I mean?
Just a local guy, you know.
But like you said, like all the people in your upbringing and stuff in your local neighborhood, they were all like huge Zorich fans, and they all wanted to be
Right.
Zorich. And I mean,
Right.
this shows why. This shows why, bro. He's blue collar
Right.
through and
Yeah,
through. You know,
absolutely.
so
Absolutely,
cool,
man.
man. Yeah,
Yep.
I still had. I don't know about you, but I had a bunch of questions left, so I'm glad
Yeah, I had a
he's.
couple. Yeah, I had a couple, but I got the ones off that I needed to get off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, you have a good night, and thanks
All right,
again.
brother.
And I appreciate you, man.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.
Hey, real quick, YouTubers, make sure you like and subscribe to us. We've got a lot more coming up. Daniel and I have been talking about. We've been cooking. We got a lot of content, a lot of celebs coming in, and a lot of people that want to be on our show. And we're just blessed to be with them, and we're blessed to be with you guys. And thanks for. Thanks for just coming in with a couple guys that really don't know shit, but
Just talking sports, man.
yeah, we're just talking sports. We're just shooting the breeze.
Like we think we know anything about it.
Hey, and we call the guy that does know something about it, right? Because that's the
Right.
guy that
Absolutely.
answers all our questions.
Absolutely, man. All right, man.
All right, man. Thanks again.
Yep. All right.